I stand in my own dining room, watching the steam rise from the dishes I spent the entire morning preparing. The air smells like cinnamon butter and something sweeter, anticipation maybe. My hands are steady now, but they weren't an hour ago. Even as I place the last serving spoon on the table, I can still feel the echo of yesterday on my cheek, the place where my adopted daughter's hand met my face. I never thought I would say a sentence like that. Not at 72 years old. Not after everything I've lived, survived, and rebuilt. But here I am. I hear her footsteps before I see her. Sharp, confident, careless. She always walks like the world belongs to her. For a long time, I told myself it was a sign of independence, strength, maybe even ambition. But after yesterday, I see it differently. Now I hear arrogance, entitlement, a kind of coldness I refuse to pretend I don't notice anymore. She enters the room with a smug little smile, the same one she wore when she hit me. "Wow," she says, sliding into her chair as if she owns the place. "You really went all out." I don't answer. I just watch her. It feels strange staring at someone you raised, fed, loved, and wondering when they stop seeing you as a person. Then she laughs low, satisfied. "You learn fast, you worthless old woman." The words slip out of her mouth like they're nothing, like they haven't been rehearsed in her head, like she hasn't been waiting to say them again. My heart doesn't race this time. It doesn't break either. Just settles. Because today I'm ready. Today she has no idea what's coming. And then it happens. She reaches for the fork, still wearing that poisonous smile, until she freezes. Her face changes so fast I almost feel the shift in the air. Her hand stops mid-movement. The fork slips from her fingers and clatters against the plate. She sees him. Her eyes go wide. Her breath catches. All that confidence melts away like sugar in hot water. What is he doing here?" she whispers. I keep my gaze on her, steady and quiet. I don't have to look at the person sitting across from her. I already know he's there. I invited him. I opened the door myself. And I watched her entire plan, whatever she thought she was controlling, crumble the moment she realized she wasn't as powerful as she believed. Have you ever watched someone who mistreated you suddenly understand they've run out of places to hide? It's strange. It's not satisfying in the way people imagine. It's deeper, heavier. Like justice is a weight you've been carrying for too long. And suddenly, finally, someone lifts a corner of it. She swallows hard, her eyes darting between me and him as if trying to calculate how quickly everything can go wrong. She's smart, I'll give her that. Smart enough to realize that whatever she planned, whatever she thought she'd get from me, whatever she believed she'd already taken, it's over. Her voice shakes when she tries again. "Mom, why is he here?" I take my seat at the head of the table. I rest my hands gently on the linen tablecloth I ironed before dawn. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I feel the room belong to me again. "You'll understand soon," I tell her. Because the truth is simple. People think silence means weakness. That staying still means surrender. But silence can hold power. And preparation, quiet, patient, deliberate preparation, can become the sharpest blade in the room. But before I explain who he is, why he's here, and how everything she tried to build around me is about to fall apart, I need to take you back. Back to when this started. Back to the little signs I ignored. Back to the moment when the daughter I loved became the woman sitting across from me now. Let me tell you how all of this began. I guess the best place to start is 8 years before that breakfast table moment. Back when my life felt predictable, peaceful in the way only routine can make it. I was 64, newly retired after 35 years teaching 3rd grade. I had lost my husband 2 years earlier, and the house felt too big without his voice filling it. But I managed. I kept myself busy with gardening, volunteering at the local library, and baking far more than one woman should. Back then the world felt softer, lighter. I didn't know that the very traits I was proud of, kindness, trust, the willingness to help, would become the exact tools someone would later use against me. I met Emma through a mentorship program at a community center. She was 34 at the time, sharp-tongued but shy underneath it, or at least that's how she seemed. She came from a difficult background, bounced around foster homes, never truly rooted anywhere. I bonded with her quickly, maybe too quickly. She once told me, "You remind me of the mom I wish I had." And I held on to that sentence like it meant something sacred. Maybe it did. Or maybe I simply wanted to believe I still had purpose. Over the next year, she became a regular presence in my life. She helped with errands, joined me for dinners, stayed through holidays. I didn't question it when she gently slid into spaces my late husband once filled. Opening jars for me, changing light bulbs, insisting the house needed younger hands. Looking back now, I see the early signs so clearly. It's strange how hindsight works. How something you once saw as affection can later feel like the beginning of a storm. One afternoon, I noticed my reading glasses weren't where I left them. They turned up in the kitchen drawer, next to the spatulas. I laughed it off, telling myself I'd been distracted, maybe even forgetful. I had just turned 65 then, and age can feel like an easy explanation for anything. But then it happened again. And again. Keys. Notes. Envelopes. Things ending up in the wrong drawers, wrong rooms, wrong places entirely. I told Emma once, half joking, "I think the house is playing tricks on me." She tilted her head and gave a small sympathetic smile. "Or maybe you're just too stressed, Mom. Grief does that." I felt grateful she cared enough to notice. Now it chills me how natural the comment sounded. Another time, after she'd spent the weekend helping me reorganize my pantry, I walked in to find a stack of bills I didn't remember placing on the counter. The envelopes were opened, even though I was certain I hadn't opened them yet. "Oh, I thought you already saw those," she said when I asked. "They were just sitting out." Except they hadn't been. Little things. Small ripples on calm water. Easy to ignore until you realize they're warnings. Then came the night she showed up at my door crying. Something about a failed relationship. Needing a place to stay just for a while. I couldn't turn her away. I wouldn't have turned anyone away, but especially not someone I had grown to care about. She moved into the guest room. Days became weeks. Weeks became 3 months. "Mom," she called me constantly, even in public, and I let her. I let her because it felt good. It filled a space inside me I didn't even realize had gone empty. During those months, she slowly took control of things without me noticing. It started with small conveniences, offering to handle grocery lists, organizing my mail, dealing with repairmen. She had an efficiency I admired. Confidence I lacked. I told myself she was helping because she cared. But the helping gradually became monitoring. One day, I overheard her telling someone on the phone, "She needs me. She's not as sharp as she used to be." The words weren't cruel, but they stung. I remember standing behind the hallway corner, clutching the railing, wondering when I had begun needing someone at all. Things escalated after she got a new job an hour away. She couldn't keep living with me, so she insisted, that I sign paperwork giving her access to some of my accounts in case of emergencies. "You live alone, Mom," she said softly, tucking my hair behind my ear like I was the child. "What if something happens? I just want to protect you. Protect me." I believed her. I signed. It was only after she left, after she moved into her expensive apartment with gleaming hardwood floors and stainless steel appliances, that I realized the tone of her visits had changed. She no longer came over just to spend time with me. She came with purpose, checking things, asking questions about my health, commenting on my memory. "Mom, you asked me that yesterday," she'd say with a sigh. "Are you feeling okay?" Sometimes she was right. Sometimes I had repeated myself. But everyone repeats themselves. Everyone forgets things now and then. Still, she made each slip feel enormous, like a crack spreading across a fragile surface. One Sunday afternoon, I opened my medicine cabinet and saw that my pills were rearranged, labeled with sticky notes in her handwriting. "Take this first. Don't mix these." Wrong time. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I didn't remember asking her to do that. I didn't remember agreeing to it. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. "I'm just helping," she said. But her voice sharpened on the last word, as if daring me to question her. That was when the first deep unease settled in my chest. Not fear. Not yet. Just a heavy awareness that something was shifting, and not in a direction I liked. The bigger signs came later. One afternoon, while cleaning her old guest room, I found a notebook wedged between the bed frame and the wall. It wasn't hidden exactly, but it wasn't left out either. Inside were lists, my belongings noted in neat handwriting, with approximate values scribbled next to them. Some items were crossed out with question marks. I remember sitting on the floor with that notebook open on my lap, staring at the numbers like they were written in another language. I tried to convince myself she was helping me organize, that she had some innocent system for keeping track of things I wanted to donate or sell someday. But deep down something cracked. And then, almost as if fate wanted to confirm my worst suspicions, my banker called me about an attempted withdrawal, a large one I hadn't made. "Are you sure you didn't authorize this?" he asked gently. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Emma arrived that evening with flowers and a cheerful smile. Too cheerful. Too bright. I remember thinking it felt rehearsed. When I asked her about the account access, her expression shifted instantly. "Mom, you're confused," she said firmly. "We've talked about this. You don't remember." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Because I did remember. I remembered everything. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, I felt something I hadn't felt since losing my husband. Fear. Not the dramatic movie-style fear. The quieter kind. The kind that whispers, "Something is wrong." Have you ever ignored your instincts because the truth felt too painful to face? That was me. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. That Emma loved me. That I owed her understanding because of her past. But then came the moment that changed everything. I walked into the kitchen one morning and found my will on the table. Open. Pages exposed. A pen lying beside it. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I hadn't touched that drawer in months. There were sticky notes attached. Notes in her handwriting. Adjustments. Suggestions. Names crossed out. My name circled. Her name starred. My knees weakened. For a moment I couldn't breathe. That was the day I stopped pretending. The day the fog lifted. The day I knew, undeniably painfully, that the girl I opened my home to wasn't trying to help me. She was preparing to replace me. And that was when I made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. If she wanted a game, she had chosen the wrong opponent. I was going to investigate. Quietly. Patiently. Thoroughly. Because something told me the truth was much bigger than anything I'd found so far. And I was right. I didn't sleep much the night I found my will laid out with her handwriting all over it. I kept turning from side to side, replaying every moment of the past year in my mind, trying to decide which ones were harmless and which ones were warnings I refused to see. By morning I had made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to confront Emma. Not yet. I needed proof. Real proof. The kind no one could twist or deny. I started small. I needed to know whether I was imagining things or if she was really slipping into parts of my life she had no right to touch. The first thing I did was take photos of every drawer, cabinet, and shelf in the house, top to bottom, corner to corner. My phone became my witness. That way, the next time something moved, I would know. The next time a paper disappeared or a door was left ajar, there would be no more doubting myself. 3 days later, I discovered the first clue. I walked into my study and saw my desk cabinet slightly open. Not fully, just enough to look like someone tried to be careful. But I had closed it tight the day before. When I checked my photos, they confirmed it. The cabinet had been closed. Inside, my birth certificate, which I kept under a folder, was now lying on top. My social security card had been turned sideways. A small envelope containing the deed to my house had been pushed toward the front, as if someone had been rifling through it in a hurry. I sat down in my chair, heart pounding so hard my ears pulsed with sound. I wanted to believe I had simply forgotten. I wanted so badly for it to be my memory. But deep down I knew better. Emma had been here. And she wanted something that belonged to me. A few days after that, I overheard her outside my house. Her voice carried through the living room window even though she wasn't yelling. Just speaking with a kind of sharp urgency I'd never noticed before. "Just be patient," she said to someone. "Once everything goes through, it'll be easy." A pause. "I told you she's getting worse. She won't even notice." My hand froze on the curtain. The air felt heavy, thick enough to swallow. Then I heard her say, "Of course I have access. Why do you think I made her sign those papers?" My throat tightened so quickly I nearly choked. I wanted to scream, to open the door and demand answers. But I forced myself to stay still. If I confronted her too early, I'd lose any chance of discovering the full extent of what she was doing. That night, I couldn't stop hearing that sentence replaying in my mind like a taunt. Why do you think I made her sign those papers? Made me? I had thought she was helping, caring, protecting me. No, she had been setting the stage. The next step was riskier. I needed to know what she was doing with the access I had given her. So the next morning I drove to the bank. The manager, a polite young man named Derek, greeted me with a worried look when I asked to see all recent activity on my accounts. He printed out a stack of papers thick enough to be a small book. I sat down at a private desk and started going through the pages one by one, trying to keep my hands from shaking. At first, everything looked normal, regular payments, bills, the usual. But then I saw it. A transfer of $1,200 to an account I didn't recognize. Then another one, $900. Then $450. All categorized as authorized withdrawals. My stomach flipped. I felt a coldness spread through my chest like someone had poured ice water inside me. Do you recognize these transactions? Derek asked gently. I didn't make them, I whispered. He hesitated. Do you want to file a fraud report? I shook my head. Not yet. Please print everything from the last 6 months. When he walked away, I pressed my hands against my face, trying to breathe through the dizziness. 6 months. 6 months of transactions she had made while smiling at me across the dinner table, calling me mom, brushing my hair out of my eyes, telling me I was loved. I gathered every page and placed them neatly in my purse. I didn't want Derek calling attention to anything, not yet. Not until I knew exactly how deep this went. On my way home, I dialed my neighbor Lillian, a retired nurse who lived 2 houses down and had known me for 20 years. Lillian, I asked, trying to sound casual despite my shaking voice, have you noticed anyone coming in and out of my house when I wasn't home? She hesitated. Well, I didn't want to worry you, honey, but yes. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. Who? Your daughter. I've seen her a few times when your car wasn't in the driveway. I figured she had a key. She didn't. Not officially anyway. I had only ever given her one for emergencies, but at some point she must have made a copy. Did she ever take anything out? I asked. Another pause. One time I saw her leave with a stack of folders, but I assumed you asked her to. I almost had to pull over. My vision blurred for a second. I thanked Lillian and ended the call, my fingers trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone into my lap. Everything was suddenly clicking together like pieces of a puzzle I wished I didn't understand. The missing papers, the misplaced belongings, the comments about my memory, the notebook valuing my possessions, the unauthorized withdrawals, the phone call outside my house. Emma wasn't just planning something. She was already doing it. Still, I needed more. I needed undeniable evidence. 2 days later, I did something I never imagined I'd do at 72. I followed her. I waited until she arrived at my house with a bag of groceries, something she did unpredictably now, appearing only when she wanted to. As soon as she walked inside, I slipped around the fence and crouched behind the hydrangea bushes near the window. I know how ridiculous it sounds. A grown woman hiding in her own yard like a burglar. But survival does strange things to people. And I was surviving, even if I didn't look graceful doing it. From my spot by the window, I could hear her moving around the kitchen. Then she walked toward my bedroom. I held my breath. A full minute passed. Then 2. When she returned, she was holding a white envelope, one I recognized instantly. My pension documents. She tucked them into her bag and pulled out her phone. I leaned closer to the window, afraid I would miss her words. She won't notice, she whispered. Trust me. I know exactly what I'm doing. I stepped back so fast I nearly slipped into the flower bed. In that moment, something inside me hardened. The fear didn't go away, it settled. It condensed into something sharper, colder, more focused. Determination. Because now I knew what she was after. She wanted control. Full control. Legal control. And she was working toward it faster than I had imagined. But she wasn't going to get it. Not anymore. And what I uncovered next, the phone call, the second account, the documents she forged, those were the things that changed everything. But I'll get to that. Because what she did just a few days later shattered the last piece of doubt I had left. What happened next still lives in my memory like a slow-moving storm. I keep replaying it sometimes, not because I want to, but because it was the moment I finally understood what Emma truly saw when she looked at me. And it wasn't a mother. 3 days after I caught her taking my pension documents, she came over again. But this time, she didn't bother pretending it was a visit. She walked in with a purpose in her step, her face tense, her jaw tight. Something had changed. She wasn't being careful anymore. "Mom," she called from the front door. "We need to talk. It's important." I had been expecting this. I had known, deep in the pit of my stomach, that she would eventually push things further. But even I wasn't prepared for what she tried to do that afternoon. She sat down at my kitchen table, her fingers tapping impatiently against the wood. "Listen," she began, "I've been talking to some people and things are getting worse. With you." My pulse picked up. "Worse?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed dramatically. "Your memory, Mom. Your behavior. You're overwhelmed. You forget things. You get confused." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Emma, those are normal things. Everyone forgets things sometimes." She leaned forward. "No, not like this." There was a softness to her tone, but it wasn't kindness. It was calculation. The kind of softness people use when they're trying to sell you something, or convince you to sign your name on a dotted line without reading the fine print. She pulled out a stack of papers from her bag. Thick, official-looking. Too many pages for anything innocent. "What's that?" I asked. "Just some forms," she said lightly. "Basic stuff. You know, for your safety." I didn't touch the papers. I didn't even lean closer to look. Something about the way she slid them toward me made my skin crawl. "Go ahead," she urged. "Just skim them. It's nothing serious." But her eyes told another story. There was anticipation there. A flicker of excitement she tried to hide. I had seen that look before, on kids who thought they could cheat on a test without getting caught. She wanted me to sign something. Something big. "I'll read them later," I said. Her jaw tightened. "Mom, we shouldn't wait." I forced a small smile. "I'm tired. Let's talk about this tomorrow." Her expression hardened in an instant. The sweet, patient daughter act cracked like thin ice. "Why do you always have to make everything difficult?" she snapped. The words hit me like a slap. Not because of the anger, but because of the familiarity. How long had she been speaking to me like this without me truly hearing it? She grabbed the papers and stuffed them back into her bag. "I'm just trying to help you." "God, you make me feel like the bad guy." I didn't say anything. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was afraid my voice would shake. She stood up to leave, muttering under her breath. I caught only pieces of it. Ridiculous. Not much time, going to lose everything if she doesn't sign. When the door closed behind her, I let my shoulders fall. My entire body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled. I walked to the table and sat down, pressing both hands over my eyes. Have you ever had a moment when you suddenly see the truth with painful clarity? When the person in front of you stops being a blur of excuses and memories and becomes exactly who they are. That was the moment for me. She wasn't going to wait for me to willingly give her control. She was going to take it. The next morning, I went through her old guest room again. Not because I expected to find anything new, but because I had to try. I needed to understand exactly what she was planning. I opened her closet and moved aside a small suitcase she always kept there just in case, as she used to say. Behind it was a shoebox. Inside were letters, notes, receipts I had never seen, invoices for things I had never bought, medication I had never taken. And then, folded neatly beneath everything else, I found something that made my chest tighten. A printed email, addressed to a lawyer, from her. The subject line read, "Urgent. Regarding guardianship process." The blood drained from my face. Guardianship. I read the email slowly, my eyes filling with disbelief. She had already started the process. She had been gathering evidence, or creating it, to claim I wasn't able to manage my own life. The misplaced items, the notes on my medications, the comments about my memory, the repeated questions she exaggerated. All of it wasn't just manipulation. It was documentation. It was preparation. My hands trembled as I folded the letter and placed it gently back inside the box. For a long moment, I just sat there on the floor, surrounded by the quiet of my own house, feeling completely unanchored. She wanted legal, permanent control over me. over my home, over everything I had. I needed help. That afternoon, I drove to a lawyer's office. Someone recommended by Lillian. His name was Benjamin Carter. Middle-aged, sharp-eyed, with a kind of calm confidence that made me breathe easier the moment he shook my hand. "What you're describing," he said after listening to everything, "is a common pattern in elder financial abuse cases." Hearing those words out loud made my stomach twist. Elder abuse. I had read articles about it. I never imagined I'd be telling my own story in a lawyer's office. Benjamin leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "You're not imagining this. And you're not overreacting. You're in danger of losing control of your own estate if she files for guardianship before you're prepared." My voice came out quiet. "What do I do?" "You gather proof," he said. "Everything you've seen, everything she's taken, every conversation. The more evidence, the harder it is for her to twist reality." "I've already started," I whispered. He nodded. "Good. Now you're going to take it further." Over the next hour, he gave me a list of steps. Secure documents, monitor financial activity, collect records, and track every suspicious incident. He also advised me to speak to my doctor to document my mental clarity, something that felt humiliating at first but made sense in the larger picture. "Emma is counting on people believing her," Benjamin said. "Your job is to give them a reason not to." When I left the office, the sun was already setting. I sat in my car for a long moment watching the sky turn orange, then pink, then purple. I felt grief seep through me. Not the grief of losing someone, but the grief of realizing I had already lost them. My next step was to gather more. Everything. Every scrap of evidence that proved I was right. And that's when I found the final piece. Something that confirmed without any doubt that Emma wasn't just manipulating me. She was planning something far, far bigger. But to explain what I found and what it meant, I need to take you to the day I followed her again. The day I heard the call that changed everything. Because that was the moment I realized she wasn't working alone. And the truth nearly brought me to my knees. I didn't plan to follow her again. It wasn't bravery or strategy. It was desperation. An instinctive pull, like something inside me whispered that I was running out of time. So when Emma arrived at my house late that Thursday morning, pacing across my porch with her phone pressed to her ear, I stayed hidden behind the living room curtain. She wasn't speaking loudly, but her tone carried an urgency that instantly made my pulse race. "No, she hasn't signed anything yet," she said. "I told you she's stubborn. She thinks she can handle everything on her own." A long pause. She paced again, her hand pressed to her forehead. "Yes, I'm trying. But it has to look real. You know that. If we push too hard, they'll suspect something." My heart dropped into my stomach. "They?" Plural. I leaned closer to the curtain, trying to catch every word. "No, she doesn't know anything," Emma continued. "She's clueless. Trust me. I've been planting the signs for months. Misplaced things, confusion, the medication setup. She'll look incompetent on paper." A cold shock ran through my entire body, leaving my fingertips numb. Hearing her say it out loud, admitting it so casually, felt worse than any suspicion I had ever carried. I must have gasped because she suddenly stopped walking. For a moment I thought she had heard me, but she only shifted her weight and lowered her voice. "Yes. Once I have control, everything will be taken care of. You'll get your part. Promise. Just be patient." I pressed a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Her part? Someone else's part? Of what? She hung up a moment later and walked to her car. That's when I made the decision. I grabbed my keys, waited until she turned onto the main road, and then followed at a safe distance. I felt ridiculous, an old woman trying to tail someone, but adrenaline made me steady, sharp, focused. She drove 15 minutes into town, parking behind a strip mall near a rundown insurance office. She stepped out, looked around, checking maybe, and hurried inside. I parked 2 buildings away, heart hammering so loudly it felt like my own body was betraying me. After a moment, I got out and walked past the building, pretending to check my phone. Through the dusty blinds, I could see her sitting across from a man in a wrinkled suit. He handed her a folder. She flipped it open, scanned the papers, and nodded. The man pointed to a few lines, explaining something. She leaned forward, her face stern, focused, almost hungry. I couldn't hear anything, but I saw the outline of the form through the window. A legal template I recognized. A guardianship petition. She wasn't planning it anymore. She was filing it. A wave of dizziness hit me so strongly I had to steady myself against the brick wall. My breath shook. My hands trembled. But I forced myself to walk away before she left the building and saw me. I drove home on autopilot, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. By the time I parked in my driveway, my legs were shaking so badly I had to sit for a few minutes before I could even step out of the car. Everything was unraveling faster than I expected. And then the doorbell rang. I wasn't ready to see her, but there she was, standing on my porch holding a small stack of envelopes. She was smiling, but there was nothing warm about it. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Mom," she said cheerfully. "I brought your mail." My stomach clenched. She had beaten me home. She must have taken a different route. She stepped inside without waiting for an answer. "You left your front curtains open," she said, glancing around the living room. "You really shouldn't do that. Anyone could see you." Her eyes flicked briefly toward the very curtain I had hidden behind earlier. My chest tightened. Did she know? I forced a calm expression. "Thank you for the mail." "No problem." She set the envelopes on the table, then turned to face me. "Actually," she added, lowering her voice, "we need to talk." I tried to swallow, but my throat felt dry. "About what?" She took a slow breath, preparing. "Mom, look. I've been talking to some professionals, and they're concerned about you." My heart dropped. "Professionals?" "Yes." She stepped closer. "People who can assess your situation, your mental state, your stability." I stared at her. Words wouldn't come. She smiled softly like she was comforting a child. "You've been struggling, Mom. You forget things. You misplace things. You get confused. Sometimes you even accuse me of things that don't make sense." I felt heat rise to my face. Anger, fear, humiliation mixing into something sharp and painful. "Emma, that's not." "Please don't argue," she said gently. "It's for the best." Her voice, that tender tone. It was the same voice she had used months ago, telling me she only wanted to help. But now I could hear the rot underneath. She continued, "These professionals think it might be time to consider getting some help with decision-making. Nothing extreme. Just someone to support you. To make sure you're safe." I took a step backward, unable to hide the tremble in my hands. "You're trying to take control of my life." Her expression changed. Just barely. But I saw it. A flicker of impatience. A tightening around the eyes. A small shift of the mouth. The mask slipping. "Mom," she said almost sharply. "Stop being dramatic." My breath caught. She exhaled again, smoothing her hair. "Listen. A caseworker is coming by next week. They'll talk to you, evaluate you, and decide if assistance is necessary." I felt my knees weaken. "You already scheduled someone?" "Yes." Her tone was firm now. "Because you need it." The audacity stunned me. I couldn't speak. She stepped closer again, lowering her voice to a whisper. "And if you're smart, you'll cooperate. Fighting it will only make you look worse." A chill ran down the back of my neck. She gave me a tight smile. "I'm looking out for you, whether you like it or not." For a moment we stood there in silence, her watching me with that unsettling mix of pity and triumph, and me trying to breathe without collapsing. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression flickering briefly with something I couldn't read. "I have to go," she said. "We'll talk more later." She opened the door, but before stepping out, she looked back over her shoulder. "Oh, and don't forget to take your medication tonight. You missed it yesterday." My heart stopped. She had rearranged my pill bottles again. I hadn't even placed them where she thought I had. She left without another word. I stood there staring at the closed door, feeling like the walls were closing in around me. A caseworker, guardianship forms, secret meetings, phone calls with someone who was expecting a part. She was accelerating everything. I went to my study, closed the door, and sat down at my desk. My hands were still shaking, but I forced myself to breathe slowly, deeply. Then I reached for the file of documents Benjamin had told me to collect. I wrote down everything that had happened that day. Every sentence she'd said. Every shift in her voice. Every clue I'd seen. When I finished, I looked at the folder, thicker now, heavier, and realized something frightening. This wasn't just escalation. It was the final sprint. She had decided to act. And she wasn't planning to fail. That night I barely slept. And when morning came, I discovered something that made my blood turn cold. A letter. Slipped under my door. Addressed to Guardianship Services. With my name typed on the front. It wasn't sealed. And inside was something I never expected to read. Something that proved she wasn't acting alone. Something that revealed exactly who she had partnered with. And why. I stared at the envelope on the floor for a long time before picking it up. My first instinct was to ignore it, pretend it wasn't real. But denial was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I bent down slowly, the weight of the paper somehow heavier than it should have been, and carried it to the kitchen table. My name was typed neatly across the front. Not handwritten. Not scribbled. Typed like an official notice. My fingers trembled as I slid the document out. Inside was a printed form, an evaluation request addressed to a state agency. At first glance it looked real. Too real. But when I read the details, a wave of disbelief washed over me. It was written by someone claiming to be a concerned community witness. Someone who had observed signs of cognitive decline and worrying behavior patterns. Someone who described me as fragile, confused, and unsafe alone. Someone who wrote, "I fear for her well-being. She is vulnerable and easily manipulated." My heart pounded painfully. The signature at the bottom wasn't Emma's. It was Lillian's. My neighbor. My friend of 20 years. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. I read the name again slowly as though it might change on the page. It didn't. My vision blurred and I had to blink hard to clear it. Lillian. The woman who had recommended Benjamin. The woman who had checked on me for years. The woman who brought me lemon bars every Easter. The woman who had told me she saw Emma sneaking into my house. The woman I trusted. At first, confusion hit me like a sudden gust of cold air. It didn't make sense. Why would she? But then the shock settled into something deeper. Heavier. I remembered Emma's phone call on the porch. "You'll get your part." I remembered the hesitation in Lillian's voice when I'd asked if she'd seen anyone around my house. "Well, I didn't want to worry you, honey." And suddenly it all made sense. Not just Emma. Not just some stranger on the phone. It was a network. A plan. A partnership. Lillian wasn't an innocent bystander. She was an accomplice. My hands clenched around the letter so tightly the paper crumpled. I forced myself to release it before I tore it in half. I laid it flat on the table again, smoothing the creases with shaking hands. I read it a second time slower. Every sentence felt like a betrayal written in ink. She becomes defensive when questioned. She forgets conversations. She appears paranoid about being monitored. She has accused her daughter of stealing. All the pieces they needed. All the things they'd manipulated me into looking like. And then I saw something that made my stomach turn. A line near the end. "I am in close contact with her daughter Emma, who is deeply concerned and trying her best." I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. My chest tightened, a pressure building behind my ribcage so intensely I had to grip the table to steady myself. They had been coordinating. Comparing notes. Building a case. Every misplaced item. Every worried comment. Every innocent question from Lillian. Every step Emma took to push me toward looking incompetent. It was all connected. And I was the target. For a moment the room felt too quiet. Too still. As if the world had paused, waiting to see what I'd do. Then I did the only thing I could. I called Benjamin. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Carter? Is everything all right?" "No," I said, my voice breaking. "You need to see what I just found." I drove to his office with the letter clutched in my hand, my knuckles pale from the grip. When he read it, his jaw tightened. He sat back slowly, the paper held like it was something toxic. "This is a fabricated statement," he said. "I know. And she's not even subtle about it." "I know." He looked at me, eyes serious. "This is coordinated, Mrs. Carter. This isn't accidental. Someone coached her on what to write." I realized that. He exhaled. "They're building grounds for emergency guardianship. If they file this with your daughter's petition and claim you're in danger, The court can act fast. My skin went cold. How fast? Days. The word echoed inside me like an alarm bell. Days. Not months. Not weeks. Days. I swallowed hard. What do I do? You prepare, he said firmly. Immediately. He outlined the next steps, steps that felt more like instructions for war than legal advice. You need witnesses who know you're stable. People Emma can't manipulate. I nodded. You need medical evaluations proving your cognitive clarity. I nodded again. You need to secure your documents, your valuables, your accounts. Another nod. My throat was too tight for words. And, he added gently, you need to protect yourself emotionally. This will get worse before it gets better. I inhaled shakily. I'm not afraid of her. Benjamin gave me a sympathetic look. Maybe not. But fear isn't what people like your daughter rely on. They rely on confusion, isolation, doubt. As he spoke, I realized something. I wasn't doubting myself anymore. Not even a little. The fog she had tried to wrap around me had burned away completely. I knew what she was. I knew what she was doing. And I wasn't going to let her win. Before I left, Benjamin handed me a sheet with documentation steps. I folded it and placed it in my purse next to the letter. When I got home, I forced myself to knock on Lillian's door. She answered with her usual warm smile. Well, hello, dear. I held up the letter. Her smile froze. I found this, I said quietly. Her eyes darted to the page, then back to me. Oh, that. Honey, don't lie to me. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked down, her face tightening into something I had never seen from her before. Guilt or maybe fear. Or maybe just the discomfort of being caught. I didn't mean any harm, she whispered. You tried to take my life away. She flinched. Emma said you needed help. Emma said a lot of things, I answered. She didn't meet my eyes again. I walked away before she could say anything else, because if I stayed I might cry. And I refused to cry in front of someone who had stabbed me in the back. Inside my house I locked the door. Then I sat at the kitchen table, the letter in front of me, Benjamin's list beside it. For the first time since this began, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. I was preparing. I was fighting back. Because they thought I was weak. They thought I was confused. They thought I could be manipulated into disappearing quietly. But they didn't know me at all. And what I discovered the next day, when I finally intercepted the call they didn't expect me to hear, proved exactly what I feared. Emma hadn't been working with just one person. She had been working with 3. And one of them had the power to destroy me completely. The turning point came on a morning that felt painfully ordinary. I woke up early, made coffee, opened the curtains, and tried to convince myself everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Not after the letter, not after Benjamin's warning, not after realizing Emma had built an entire team around destroying my independence. I kept checking my phone, waiting for something. A sign. A message. A mistake. Instead, the mistake came from me, though I didn't realize it at first. Around 10 a.m. my landline rang. That alone was unusual. Almost no one called it anymore. When I picked up, there was no voice, just silence. I listened harder. And then I heard it. A small click. Like someone switching lines. Then a voice. I recognized it instantly. Emma. She has no idea, she said. She's completely unaware. I froze, barely daring to breathe. A second voice answered her. A man's voice. Calm. Confident. Too confident. Good. Keep it that way. The paperwork is nearly done. We just need the evaluation report. She's refusing to sign anything, Emma said. That doesn't matter. Guardianship can be granted without consent if incompetence is proven, or convincingly argued. Emma laughed softly. Trust me, the incompetence angle is handled. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, pulse racing. I knew I had to stay silent. If they realized I was on the line, the one advantage I had would vanish. What about the neighbor? Did she deliver her statement? The man asked. Yes, Emma said. Lillian already submitted it. A slow, satisfied breath came through the receiver. Good. Between that and the financial inconsistencies we've documented, the court will see you as the responsible party. Financial inconsistencies. They were making it sound like I was mismanaging my own accounts. My heart hammered as I listened. Emma spoke again, quieter. And once this goes through, everything transfers, right? Everything, the man replied. Her assets, the house, the accounts, all under your control. Then you'll get your percentage, she assured him. So there it was. The motive. The arrangement. The reason she had been so eager, so thorough, so cold. Money. I didn't know why I felt surprised. Maybe a part of me still hoped there was something else. Some twisted sense of affection. Some misguided intention. But no. It was simpler than that. I was a bank account with a heartbeat. A moment of static interrupted the call, and panic gripped me. I thought I'd lost them. But then I heard a faint shuffle and Emma spoke again. What about the medical evaluation? She's too sharp when she wants to be. We'll take care of it, the man said. I have someone lined up. My stomach flipped. Someone lined up. Someone willing to lie. Just make sure she's home on Monday at 4, he added. That's when the assessment officer will visit. If she resists, it only strengthens the case. I nearly dropped the phone. Monday, 4 p.m. An assessment officer. Everything was closing in. Then Emma said something that changed everything. Honestly, she whispered. I'm tired of pretending to care. I don't even like being around her. The man chuckled. No one expects you to. Just finish the job. A small sound escaped my throat. An involuntary gasp too soft to be deliberate. But it was enough. Did you hear that? Emma asked sharply. I panicked. I hung up. My hands shook as I placed the phone back in its cradle. I stood there, frozen, my breath coming fast and uneven. My heart felt like it was pounding in my throat. They knew. Or at least suspected. I needed to move. I needed to act now. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Benjamin's words echoed in my head. You need witnesses. You need documentation. You need clarity. So I grabbed my purse, my folder of evidence, and my coat, and drove straight to my doctor's office. I didn't have an appointment, but when I told the receptionist it was urgent, she squeezed me in. Dr. Myers had known me for years. When I explained, carefully without sounding panicked, what was happening, her face softened. You're not confused, she said. You're scared. And for good reason. I felt tears prick the back of my eyes. I blinked them away. She ran a full cognitive evaluation. Memory testing. Reasoning exercises. Orientation questions. Problem solving. I passed every section with ease. At the end, she placed a hand over mine. You're mentally sharp, she said firmly. Nothing about you indicates cognitive decline. I'll write a statement today. Relief flooded through me so abruptly I had to inhale sharply. Thank you, I whispered. But the relief didn't last long. Because when I walked out to my car, Emma was sitting on the hood. My breath caught. She slid off the hood with controlled grace, her jaw clenched tight, her eyes cold. Mom, she said. We need to talk. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She stepped closer. Why weren't you home? I stopped by. The lie was so obvious it almost stunned me. I had errands, I said. Errands, she repeated, her tone flat. Funny. You didn't seem confused when you were leaving. I swallowed hard. Emma, what do you want? Her expression flickered. Anger, frustration, something darker. I want you to stop making things difficult, she said quietly. You're forcing my hand. I felt my fingertips go cold. She leaned in slightly. Just cooperate on Monday. Please. Don't embarrass yourself. Anger sparked inside me, sharp and sudden, like a match scraping against stone. I'm not incompetent, I said. Her lips curled into a small mocking smile. That's not your decision. I stepped back. This is my life. And soon, she whispered, it won't be. For the first time since all this began, I didn't feel afraid of her. I felt furious. I pushed past her, got into my car, and drove off before she could say another word. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but not from fear, from adrenaline. When I got home, I locked every door, every window. Then I spread my documents across the kitchen table. The bank records, the forged statements, the notebook I found, the email to the lawyer, the letter Lillian had written, my medical evaluation. Piece by piece, my case was forming. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Carter," a man said. "This is Andrew Blake from Adult Protective Services. I'm reaching out to confirm your evaluation appointment for Monday at 4 p.m. My breath stilled. "Yes," I said slowly. "I'm aware. I'd also like to inform you," he continued gently, "that we received a concerning report about your mental status and safety." "I know," I whispered. "I'm required to follow protocol," he said. "But I want to ask you directly. Do you feel safe in your home?" I closed my eyes. For the first time, someone was asking me that. Not assuming. Not twisting. Not manipulating. Asking. "Yes," I answered. "But someone is trying to make sure I don't." A pause. "Do you have proof of that?" he asked carefully. I looked at the table, at the overwhelming evidence spread across it. "Yes," I said. "I have plenty." "Then I'll see you Monday," he said. "And I will listen." The call ended, and something inside me shifted. For the first time, I had an ally. Someone official. Someone neutral. Someone who wasn't part of Emma's web. The fear that had been gripping me for weeks loosened, just enough for me to breathe properly again. I gathered every piece of evidence and placed it into a single binder. A weapon in its own way. A shield. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months. And when Monday came, I was ready. But Emma wasn't. She wasn't ready for the truth. She wasn't ready for the evidence. She wasn't ready for the person she thought she had weakened to stand up and fight. And she definitely wasn't ready for what the caseworker discovered when he arrived. Because that afternoon was the moment everything turned against her. On Monday, I woke up before dawn. For a long moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, letting the early light seep in through the curtains. My chest rose and fell slowly, each breath deliberate. I could feel the weight of the day pressing down on me. But it wasn't the same suffocating pressure I'd felt before. This felt different. Focused. Sharp. Grounded. I wasn't walking into a trap anymore. I was walking into a battle I finally understood. I got up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the binder I'd assembled the night before. Page by page, I reviewed everything. My doctor's written evaluation. The bank records. The forged statements. The email to the lawyer. The notebook valuing my possessions. The letter Lillian wrote. The times and dates of every concerning event. The notes I'd taken from the phone call. A detailed account of Emma's visits. Photos of drawers and cabinets before and after she moved things. Evidence. Every piece of it a small truth she couldn't twist anymore. By the time the clock struck noon, I had gone through the binder twice. At 1, I showered and put on a fresh blouse. 2, I reviewed my notes again. At 3:30, I sat in my living room waiting. My house was silent. My heartbeat wasn't. 4 p.m. A knock. I stood smoothing my blouse and walked to the door. When I opened it, a man in his 50s stood on the porch, tall, warm-eyed, professionally dressed. He smiled politely. "Mrs. Carter? I'm Andrew Blake, the assessment officer." Relief washed through me. His voice was calm. Neutral. Not predetermined or hostile. He didn't look like someone on anyone's payroll. He looked fair. "Please come in," I said. As he stepped inside, another car pulled into the driveway. My stomach tightened. Emma. She got out quickly, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Her smile was too wide, too bright, too rehearsed. "Mom," she said cheerfully, striding up the steps. "I came to help with the meeting." Andrew nodded politely. "You must be Emma." "Yes," she said, slipping inside without being invited. "I'm her only daughter." "Adopted," I corrected gently. Emma's jaw tightened just slightly. Andrew cleared his throat. "Well, thank you both for being here. Why don't we sit and begin?" We settled in the living room. I sat on the couch. Andrew took the armchair. Emma sat next to me, far too close, as though proximity might somehow prove her sincerity. "Mrs. Carter," Andrew began, "I want to speak with both of you, but I'd like to start with your perspective. Can you tell me how you've been feeling lately?" I caught Emma's tiny smile out of the corner of my eye. "I've been feeling manipulated," I said. Emma blinked. Hard. The smile vanished. Andrew nodded calmly. "Can you elaborate?" "Yes," I said. I reached for the binder beside me. I've prepared documentation. Emma's head snapped toward me. Documentation, she repeated, strained. I ignored her and handed the binder to Andrew. He took it, flipping open the front cover. His brows lifted slightly, impressed, not overwhelmed. I see you've been thorough, he said. I had to be, I answered. Emma let out a small, quick laugh. Mom gets confused easily, she said sweetly. She's been overwhelmed. That's why I called for help. I turned to her. No, Emma. You called for control. Her expression flickered dangerously, 1 second too fast for Andrew to notice fully, but slow enough for me to catch. Andrew closed the binder for now. Mrs. Carter, can you tell me why you believe someone is manipulating you? Because I have proof, I said simply. Emma exhaled sharply. Mom. Andrew raised a hand. Emma, I'll give you plenty of time to speak. But I want to hear from her first. Emma pressed her lips into a thin line. I reached for a stack of printed bank statements on the coffee table. These are records of withdrawals from accounts I never authorized. They were categorized as authorized, but I didn't make them. Andrew reviewed them carefully. I continued. I found my will laid out and altered. I found my documents moved. My medication rearranged. My mail opened. I have photographs of how things looked before and after. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Mom, that's... And, I said, cutting her off gently but firmly. I overheard her telling someone that my decline was ready to be documented. Andrew looked up sharply. You overheard that? Yes, I said. On the porch. She didn't know I was listening. Emma's cheeks flushed. That's not, I never. And, I added, I found a letter submitted by my neighbor. A letter claiming I'm confused, unstable, forgetful and paranoid. Emma froze. Andrew turned to me. Do you have the letter here? Yes, I said. I handed it to him. Andrew read silently. His expression darkened, not angry but deeply concerned. This is a serious accusation, he said, looking between us. And it's detailed. Very detailed. I nodded once. Too detailed. Emma gave a nervous laugh. Mom is misremembering things again. She's trying her best, but... I turned to Andrew. May I speak honestly? He nodded. Please. Emma coached Lillian to write that letter, I said. I confronted her. She didn't deny it. Andrew shifted his gaze to Emma. Is that true? Emma swallowed. She's confused. She twists things in her head. And this, I said, opening the binder to the email I had found, is an email Emma wrote to a lawyer asking how to speed up a guardianship petition. Andrew's eyes widened. He read the email carefully. Emma, he said slowly, did you write this? I was exploring options, she snapped suddenly. She needed help. You don't understand what it's like dealing with someone slipping away. Her voice cracked, not with sadness but with frustration. I spoke softly. I passed a full cognitive evaluation yesterday. Andrew's brows shot up. You did. I handed him the doctor's signed report. He read it. His jaw tightened. This clearly states you have no cognitive impairment, he said. Your memory, reasoning, and judgment are intact. Emma's face drained of color. She manipulated the test, she stammered. She's good at hiding things. Andrew closed the folder firmly. Emma, that's enough. Her mouth snapped shut. Andrew took a deep breath and turned back to me. Mrs. Carter, I want to ask you a few questions directly. I nodded. He began simple. Do you know today's date? I answered without hesitation. And the current president? Answered. Where are we right now? Answered. What did you do this morning? I listed everything clearly. Emma's knee bounced rapidly beside me, her hands trembling. Andrew continued. If someone told you to stop managing your finances and let them take over, would you agree? No, I said. Unless I truly needed help. And do you feel you need that level of help now? No, I answered firmly. I am fully capable. Emma suddenly stood. This is ridiculous. She's lying, she's manipulating. She's always been like this. Andrew raised his voice, not loud but commanding. Emma, sit down. She froze. Slowly, stiffly she sat. He turned back to me. Mrs. Carter, do Do you want Emma involved in your financial, legal, or medical decisions? I looked directly at him. No. Emma's breath hitched. She stared at me as though I'd stabbed her. But behind the shock, something else surfaced: fear. Real fear. Andrew nodded. Then I need you to say it clearly. I do not authorize my daughter to make decisions on my behalf, I said. And I feel unsafe allowing her access to my personal information. Emma's voice cracked. Mom, please. Andrew held up his hand again. Emma, I have enough information to continue without your input. She stared at him like she'd just been slapped. Andrew continued. Mrs. Carter, based on what you've shown me, it appears someone has been attempting to misrepresent your mental state. Yes, I said quietly. Someone has. Do you know who? I looked straight at Emma. Yes. The silence that followed was suffocating. Andrew stood slowly. I'll need to conduct a short home inspection and review your documents more thoroughly. But I want to be very clear. Nothing I've seen so far indicates you are incapable. In fact, your organization and clarity are well above average. Emma's face twisted, panic breaking through the composure she'd held onto for months. So what happens now? I asked. Andrew took a breath. Now, I need to verify something. He turned to Emma. I need to ask you a few questions privately. She blinked rapidly. Why privately? Protocol, he said simply. But I could tell it wasn't protocol. He wanted to see her reaction when she wasn't performing. He wanted the truth of who she was when no one else could excuse her. Emma stood, not gracefully, not confidently, but like someone standing on a cracking sheet of ice. They walked toward the hallway. I stayed in the living room. From the kitchen doorway, I saw Andrew stop and turn toward her. And then, I heard her voice. Not calm, not sweet, not rehearsed, but sharp, cold, unmasked. And what she said next was the moment everything changed. Andrew led Emma down the hallway toward my guest room, her old room. I stayed seated on the couch, hands folded tightly in my lap, listening to their footsteps fade. Then I heard it. Her voice. Stripped of sweetness, stripped of restraint, sharp, hissed, uncontrolled. I can't believe this, she snapped. She planned this. She's playing you. Andrew's voice remained even. Please lower your tone, Emma. I'm asking routine questions. She's doing this on purpose. She wants to make me look bad. I'm simply gathering information. There was a beat of silence, tense, charged, before Emma's voice rose again. This is ridiculous. You don't know what she's like when people aren't watching. I just spent an hour with her, Andrew said calmly. She was coherent, organized, and articulate. She's manipulative, Emma shot back. She's faking it. I could picture her pacing short, agitated movements, the kind she made whenever reality slipped out of her control. Andrew spoke gently. Emma, has your mother ever been diagnosed with cognitive impairment? No. Has she ever required emergency mental health intervention? No. Has she ever harmed herself or others? No, she repeated, impatient. So on what grounds? He asked carefully. Did you seek guardianship? Another silence. Longer this time. Then in a low, strained whisper, Emma said, She needs help. Andrew didn't respond. She can't live alone, Emma insisted. She forgets things. That's not what I've observed today. Well, you weren't here the other days. I can only evaluate what I see, and what is supported by documentation, Andrew replied. Emma's voice cracked. You don't understand. I deserve this. My breath stopped. You deserve what? Andrew asked. A beat. Then Emma exhaled shakily and said something that made my stomach twist with a sickening mix of dread and fury. I gave her years. Years. She owes me. Andrew didn't speak. I took care of her, she continued. I cleaned her house. I shopped for her. I helped her with everything. She should have put me first. Me. Not some stupid piece of paper she signed years ago. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I should have the right, she hissed. I earned it. Andrew's voice was calm, almost too calm. Are you referring to her estate? Emma didn't answer directly. She doesn't need it. She's old. She doesn't even use half of what she has. Why shouldn't it go to someone who actually appreciates it? Cold spread through my chest. She said it out loud. Not implied. Not hinted. Said it. For the first time, Andrew raised his voice. Not loudly but firmly. Emma, do you realize that what you're describing is financial exploitation? I'm not exploiting anyone, she snapped. I'm just getting what I'm due. What you're due, he repeated. She promised me everything, Emma said. I heard Andrew pause. Your mother told me she never promised that. Emma gave a humorless laugh. She doesn't even know what she promised anymore. That was the moment I stood. I walked down the hall until I reached the doorway. Emma noticed me first. Her eyes widened with something between shock and fury. You were listening, she spat. Andrew turned startled. Mrs. Carter. Yes, I said. I was listening. Emma's face twisted. This is all your fault. My fault. I repeated quietly. You made this happen, she said. You pushed me into this. I stepped fully into the room. Emma, I trusted you. She laughed, short, bitter, almost unhinged. You shouldn't have. Andrew held out a hand. Let's all take a breath. But Emma wasn't listening. The mask had shattered. Her composure was gone. Her eyes were bright, frantic, gleaming with something I had never seen so openly in her before. Resentment. Bitterness. Entitlement. You were supposed to take care of me, she said, her voice trembling. You were supposed to finally give me the life I deserved. A tear rolled down her cheek, not sadness but frustration. And instead, she whispered fiercely, you fought me. I inhaled slowly, because what you were doing was wrong. No, she said, shaking her head. No, it wasn't wrong. You owe me. You owe me everything. I owe you nothing, I said. Emma's face hardened, cold as marble. You're not my mother, she hissed. You never were. You're just an old woman with money and a house too big for her. And I should have had both by now. Andrew stepped subtly between us, positioning himself just slightly ahead of me. Emma, he said with professional steadiness, I need you to stop speaking. Why? She spat. So she can twist this? So she can make me the villain. Andrew exhaled. Emma, listen to me carefully. What you've said today corroborates your mother's concerns. This behavior, combined with the documents she's provided, indicates a pattern of coercion and manipulation. Emma's breath came fast and shallow. I didn't do anything wrong. Andrew shook his head. This conversation is being documented, and I need to inform you that continuing could further implicate you. Her eyes darted between us, first to Andrew, then to me. Then her voice softened in a way that sent a chill through my spine. Mom, she said, stepping closer, her expression suddenly shifting to a fragile attempt at sympathy. Come on. Let's just fix this. You know I didn't mean any of it. You know me. I stared at her. Yes, I said quietly. I finally do. She flinched. Andrew intervened. Emma, please step into the living room. I need to speak with your mother privately. No, she said quickly. No, we stay together. Emma, he said firmly, this is not optional. For a moment I thought she would argue again, but something in his tone must have struck her. She backed away slowly, eyes locked on mine all the way down the hall, until she disappeared into the living room. When she was gone, Andrew turned to me. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, are you all right? I nodded. I think so. That was intense, he said, but incredibly telling. I know. Andrew opened the binder again. Your documentation combined with her own statements is substantial. This isn't a borderline case. This is exploitation. And the court will see it. I swallowed, the weight of everything pressing down in a different way now, like relief fighting its way through tension. What happens next? I asked softly. Andrew took a breath. Now I file my report. Immediately. And I'll be recommending the guardianship petition be dismissed entirely. I'll also be flagging Emma for an investigation into attempted financial exploitation. My knees felt unsteady. I steadied myself on the dresser. And, he added, I recommend you file for a protective order. I nodded slowly. I will. He gave a small reassuring smile. You handled yourself with remarkable clarity. You countered everything she attempted to build. Because I finally saw her for who she was. I said. Andrew closed the binder. Are you ready to speak with her one last time? I exhaled. I think so. We walked back into the living room. Emma stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. When she saw Andrew, she straightened, forcing a calm she didn't feel. Well, she asked. Andrew spoke carefully. Emma, I will be filing a report stating that guardianship is not only unnecessary, but that there are concerning signs of undue influence on your part. Her face drained. What? And, he continued, I will be recommending that your access to your mother's accounts and legal documents be revoked immediately. You can't do that, she whispered. I can, he said. And I will. She looked at me, then really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time not as someone she could manipulate but as someone standing firmly against her. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. You did this. No, I said softly. You did. For the first time her shoulders slumped. Completely. As though the weight of her own deception finally landed on her fully. Andrew handed me his business card. I'll be in touch within 24 hours. I nodded. Thank you. He turned to leave. But Emma didn't move. She just stared at me. Anger flickering, confusion beneath it, and something else I couldn't quite name. Not regret. Not guilt. Just loss. Loss of control. Loss of the future she'd imagined. Loss of something she believed she deserved. Finally, she whispered, I hope you know what you're doing. I do, I said. She didn't respond. She walked to the door, her footsteps slower than I'd ever heard them. She opened it, paused, then looked back one last time. Her final words were soft, barely audible. You'll regret this. Then she closed the door. And for the first time in months, I didn't believe her. After Emma left, the house felt unbearably quiet. Not peaceful. Not comforting. Just quiet in a way that made every clock tick sound too loud. Every gust of wind through the gutters too sharp. It was the quiet that comes after a storm. The kind that isn't really calm at all, but a pause where you're waiting to see what survived. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the empty space where Emma had stood just minutes earlier. Her last words echoed faintly in my head. You'll regret this. But I didn't feel fear anymore. Just exhaustion. And something else. Something small but steady, like a candle burning against a long stretch of darkness. Relief. A soft knock pulled me out of my thoughts. For a split second my heart lurched. Emma? Coming back to shout again? To push? To try one last time? But when I opened the door, Andrew stood there. I forgot to give you one last document, he said gently, holding out a form. I stepped aside. Come in. He walked into the kitchen, placed the document on the table, and straightened his tie. This confirms that an emergency guardianship petition cannot proceed while an investigation is active. It protects you until the court reviews my full report. It took a moment for the words to settle. So that means? It means Emma can't do anything, he said. Not legally. Not now. Something inside me loosened, like a knot finally giving way after being pulled too tightly for too long. Thank you, I whispered. He offered a warm, reassuring smile. You didn't imagine any of this. You weren't confused. You weren't paranoid. You were targeted. And you handled it with remarkable clarity. His words hit deeper than I expected. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden sting behind my eyes. Most people in your situation never realize what's happening until it's too late, he continued. You saw the truth. You acted. And you saved yourself. I wish I didn't have to, I said quietly. He nodded. I know. He left a few minutes later. I closed the door behind him, leaned back against it, and exhaled slowly. It felt like the first full breath I had taken in months. I walked through each room of my house, not to check for intrusions or missing objects, but simply to make sure I still recognized my own home, my space. The place she tried to turn into something frightening, something unstable, something she could control. In the living room, I straightened a picture frame. In the hallway, I closed the linen closet she'd left slightly open. In my bedroom, I ran my hand over the quilt on my bed. My quilt, the one I'd sewn with my husband years before Emma ever stepped into my life. Everything felt mine again. That night I slept deeply. No tossing. No listening for footsteps. No checking the locks twice. Just sleep. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen. I brewed coffee and sat at the table, noticing how still the air felt without tension hovering over it. For the first time in a long while, I could just exist. Around 10, the phone rang. It was Benjamin. "Mrs. Carter," he said. "I read the preliminary assessment from Andrew. You're in a strong position. Very strong." Relief washed through me again. "So it's over?" "Not officially," he said. "But the court will almost certainly dismiss the petition based on the documents and the evaluator's findings. Emma's credibility is damaged." I closed my eyes. "Thank you." "You did the hard part," he replied. "I'm proud of you." No one had said those words to me in years. After I hung up, I found myself walking to the front porch. I sat in the rocking chair my husband had built and watched the neighborhood move around me. Kids biking, a dog barking, someone mowing their lawn in the distance. And then I saw her. Lillian. She stood at her mailbox, sorting through envelopes, avoiding looking in my direction. Her shoulders were hunched, not with age but with guilt. Or at least I hoped it was guilt. I considered going inside, pretending I hadn't seen her, pretending none of it had happened. But that wasn't who I wanted to be, not anymore. So I stood and walked slowly toward her. She stiffened as she noticed me. "Oh, hello, dear." I didn't return the smile. "Why did you do it, Lillian?" Her face dropped. Her eyes darted away. Emma told me you needed help. She said you were slipping. You knew that wasn't true." A long silence. Finally, she whispered, "I was lonely." She offered to include me. She said she'd help me out financially once everything went through. The admission felt like a punch. Not because it was surprising, but because it was such a small, empty reason to betray someone. "I trusted you," I said quietly. "I know," she whispered. "And I'm sorry." Her apology didn't feel healing. It felt hollow, like a bandage placed over a burn that still throbbed beneath. "I don't think we should talk for a while," I said gently. "I need space." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand." When I walked back home, I felt strangely lighter. Not happy, just lighter. I didn't need anger. I didn't need revenge. I just needed distance. Later that afternoon, I got another call. This time from a number I recognized instantly. Emma. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Then I answered. Her voice was quiet, subdued. "Mom." I didn't respond. She exhaled shakily. I wanted to say something. Silence. "I'm not going to apologize," she said. "Not for what I wanted, but I didn't think it would end like this." I still said nothing. She continued. "You're stronger than I thought." It didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like an accusation. As though my strength had inconvenienced her. As though resilience was a betrayal. "Goodbye, Emma," I said softly. Before she could reply, I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Days passed. Then weeks. The official dismissal came in the mail. A thin envelope containing a decision that represented months of fear, tension, and fighting. Petition denied. Investigation opened. Protective measures recommended. I sat with the letter in my hands, letting the words sink into me like warmth. Outside, the world felt calmer. Inside, even more so. I went back to volunteering at the library. I started baking again. I planted new flowers in the garden. Life slowly returned. Not exactly the same as before, but something steadier. Something earned. One afternoon, while working in the garden, I looked up at the sky, soft blue, streaked with gentle clouds, and felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for what happened, but for what I survived. For what I reclaimed. For who I became through all of it. I wasn't the same woman who doubted herself. Who second-guessed every memory. Who mistook manipulation for affection. I was someone who knew her worth again. Someone who fought for her truth. Someone who refused to disappear quietly. When I finally went back inside, the house felt warm. Familiar. Mine. And for the first time in a long while, I whispered something to myself. Not out of fear, not out of reassurance, but out of certainty. I'm still here. And I wasn't going anywhere.